Praise the Lord. He's good. I'm glad you're all here. Um, Let me see. Can you all hear me and see me clearly? Let me know in the live chat, please. Thank you very much. As you can see, I'm outside in the Hague Central Station. Not the Hague Central, not the Central Station, my bad. I'm in the Hague Central. Just left the Central Station, and now I'm around here. Can you all hear and see me clearly? Let me know, please. So it seems a bit dark around here for some reason. Hold on. Hold on. All right. Let me know if you can hear me clearly. Wow. Okay. One can hear me clearly. Joanna also. Diane also. Joanna is here. Diane is here. Sherry is here. Q is here. Tammy is here. I'm glad you're here, Tammy. Demetria is here. All right. The rest is here. Please let yourself be known in the live chat, please. Thank you very much. You can fellowship one another. And okay, let me begin. I'm in The Hague at the moment. In Dutch, it's 's-Gravenhage. 's-Gravenhage simply means the fortress of the count. A graaf is Dutch for a count. That's a military title for a council that manages a coastal area. It comes from Latin comites, so that's what a count is, and the Dutch is graaf. Haag simply means like a stronghold, often a castle where the count resides. The count is the leader of the council. Okay, so 's-Gravenhage, that's what it means. It's the military stronghold of the count. Okay, in Dutch they often say Den Haag also, which is a more modern version. In English, it's The Hague. And here in The Hague, you have this statue over here of William II, was King of the Netherlands, Grand Duke of Luxembourg, and Duke of Limburg. Okay, and well, just want you guys to see it for yourself. This is a copy of the original statue, because the original statue has been moved to Tilburg, another Dutch city. But why am I showing you this figure over here? Because this figure over here is one of the reasons. Actually, I would say the main reason, but you can debate that. But it's one of the big reasons why European believers are so weak today. Let me explain. In 1848, there was a year of revolutions throughout Europe. All across the borders, the public was revolting, and many believers were revolting with them. 1848. The United States used this as an escape to conclude their war with the Republic of Mexico and to take half of Mexico's territory early in 1848. But it wasn't just in 1848. 1847, the tension began. And in 1848, there were revolts everywhere. And in the Netherlands, by the way, 1839, Belgium officially separated from the Netherlands. And what happened is that in the Netherlands, when William II took the throne, there was a famine. So there was a lot of hunger amongst the public. And here, people were losing it. So what did this guy do? He suddenly became a liberal. He was quite conservative. And suddenly one day he announced to all the ministers, I became a liberal overnight. A lot of people didn't want to believe it. They didn't want to believe he really became a liberal. They thought it was a stunt. But then William II also came with a plan. You know what? This building over here, I'm pointing with now, because this building, let's demolish it and start something new. But then the public said, no, 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 keep it. Keep that satanic building over there. It's okay, William, keep it over there. So they kept it, and they have it till this day. Okay, because they're about to demolish this stronghold over here. Okay, what William II gave liberal concessions to the public. And later, these were codified in the Dutch Constitution, which has been renovated over and over again till this day. There's a racial bias in the Constitution in the first chapter, but I'm not going to talk about it right now. I did this in 2012, and I got gang stalkers after me back then, so I'm not doing it right now. Okay? But anyway, in the rest of Europe, People took William's example, talk about the leaders, took William's example, and they also began to give liberal concessions little by little. And European believers, there was also European believers and European diaspora, so I mean white folks across, in the diaspora, so white Americans, Australians, whatever, they were influenced by this liberal movement, and eventually European believers became so docile in how they walk by faith. And you also had this guy called Charles Finney in North America preaching things like the altar call and all that, which are not biblical. So all that worked together to disarm European believers, because European believers used to be quite fierce. Witches and warlocks and sorcerers were terrified of European believers. I mean, even the Netherlands, which was quite liberal for witchcraft throughout the centuries, when the witches would encounter a female believer, they would stand back, say, "Oh, that's a believer. Don't mess around with her." And here's the thing: during the transatlantic slave trade, there were European believers. They became pirates overseas, and if they found out that that ship carried slaves, they would free the slaves. They would track who the owner is and would destroy his business. They would destroy his whole enterprise. If you were trading in slaves, those European believers would look you up. They'll pretend to agree with you, pretend to be racist too, and then they would destroy you. And there were rich believers, including from rich believers from Poland and Russia also, that donated portions of their wealth to the struggle of the black community that was being enslaved and colonized. So European believers used to be quite fierce and people you should not mess with. They agreed with Christ. But 1848, it all began to change, and now European believers are kind of a joke, because since 1870, the establishment of the German Empire, paganism crept into the lives of many European believers, and this we see in many churches today. So is it clear to you now why a lot of European believers are not that effective and so dysfunctional in their faith walk? Do you understand now why Satan is slapping around a lot of European believers? Is it clear now to you? And is it clear now to you what role that okay, I'm gonna behave myself. That historical figure over there had in it. Is it clear to you now? Let me know in the live chat. I want you to answer me. Is it clear? Mm, all right. I don't know if there's something with the live chat or whatever. I don't see any of your answers. Hold on. I know what happens to this light thing over here. The lighting is a bit weird. Okay, but anyway. So that stronghold over there, today it's called the Binnenhof in Dutch, also known as the inner court. It has always been a satanic stronghold. God knows what outstanding crap happened over there. But 1848, the Dutch king Willem II was even willing to destroy all of this and start anew. The Pope said no. So the Dutch Pope back then, they chose the Barabbas above Christ. Not that Willem II was Christ, but you get what I mean. They were preserving the darkness that it should have done away with. So European believers between 1848 and 1870, they were demoralized and they were made infantile by false doctrine. And from since 1870, the establishment of the German Empire, this militarism from the German Empire, which came from Prussian militarism, took over the school system, and we still have a Prussian military system in our schools today. The school system we have today worldwide comes from Prussian militarism, so you know that. And the kingdom of Prussia also, which became the dominant kingdom in the German Empire, look at their coat of arms. You will see Satan twice in it, looking at himself, naked. So, yeah, promoting sodomy. So that shows you what was behind that empire. I'm not saying that the German Empire as a structure was a bad thing. there's nothing wrong with empires, but there were pagans that were behind it. So Nazi Germany was this public revival of Asian paganism. And the results were horrible, so now they try to forget about it. But hey, they haven't turned to Christ yet. Oh, and one more thing about the Netherlands. Before the Batavian Revolution, before 1795, ritual murder was a big thing in the area we today call the Netherlands. Back then, there were separate provinces just doing their own thing, but the ritual murder was a big thing around here. Historians don't want to talk about this too much, but it was a big thing. It's in 1795 when the Patriots abolished the current Dutch government that was back then, that many of those Dutch imperialists had to flee. That's why between 1794 and 1800, you see a mass influx of Dutch migrants going to the new country called United States. Because remember, apartheid was a Dutch pagan thing. The Dutch East Indies Company, or Dutch East India Company called Orange Dutch Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie, shortened to VOC, was a pagan enterprise. And it's this pagan enterprise that decides, you know what? We're going to call black people swamp monsters now, neckers. In English, you pronounce as nigger. So we're going to call those black folks swamp monsters from now on. And we're going to make publications everywhere so everyone can see them as swamp monsters. And we're going to use them as a psychological dump site of the world so that we can make our money. And so this whole racist hierarchy with apartheid, it was a Dutch thing that they put worldwide. And they forced the English, Scottish, and Irish to get along with this because the people in Britain were not really fond of this thing called slavery because they weren't fond of it. But this thing, the Dutch imperialists turned slavery into you being a swamp monster because you're from African ancestry. That's what they turned into. Being a slave used to be you have to work for someone because they kind of own your body. That's why you have no economic rights in the community. So, and also because you were a swamp monster or related to it, you're not allowed to read nor write, and you were treated worse than an animal because a nigger, or comes from Dutch necker, is a swamp monster, which a swamp demon. So if you're not but a swamp demon, you don't deserve human rights. And that's why the racial victimization of blacks was so intense. And yet collaborators in Spain, Portugal, well, the Spanish Empire, Portugal, in England, and elsewhere, that got along with the Dutch swamp monster program, and they continued it when the Dutch Empire crashed in 1672. Okay? So in 1700, it was now continued by the English, Spanish, French, and collaborators with the Dutch imperialists. And in 1795, when the satanic Dutch government that was back then was abolished because Prince William V, who used to extort his own people a lot, he already fled to Britain. When that happened, the Dutch imperialists, the majority of them left. They went to Britain and the United States because most places didn't want them. That's how bad those people were. So the Dutch people had a cleansing, a national cleansing that they conducted, getting all those Dutch imperialists out who want to keep the satanic stronghold over the country. All right? And that's why you had those towns with Dutch names emerging in the 1790s in the state of New York. But the state of New York, which used to be a Dutch territory, that's where many of them went. All right? And by the way, the Dutch imperialists, and by the way, you have two American presidents who were called Roosevelt, and they have Dutch ancestry. They're descendants of the Dutch imperialists. And let me tell you, the Dutch imperialists, when they moved to the United States, because no other country wanted them, even in Britain, when people figured out who they were harassed. They now learned English, and they became part of what you call the Whig Party. The Whig Party, the American Whig Party, was derived from the English Whig Party. I said derived. I'm not saying that the English Whig Party was directly the one running the American Whig Party. But the American Whig Party was an elitist party, and this elitist political party wanted to keep slavery and keep this neckerman or necker programming on people from African ancestry. So yes, nigger is a Dutch term translated into English, and um, also the Dutch imperialists that became American citizens, they kept the Dutch imperialist traditions and invested in the Whig Party, which later was renamed the Democratic Party. So the Democratic Party in the United States now comes from the Whig Party, which Dutch imperialists boosted with their finance after they were kicked out from their homeland, the Netherlands. Their own people wanted them out. Their farms were taken away from them. Families owned them. They had to give in all. If they were still in the Netherlands, they had to give up all their money. They were made homeless. Nobody looked at them. They were disowned by their own people. That was 1 year. Believers in the Netherlands stood their ground. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. So understand, the current racist problem in the world is from Dutch imperialism, and it was the Dutch imperialism that established what we today call capitalism too, of which Wall Street is a big institution. Is this all clear to now that the role of Dutch imperialists has been dominant for the past, I would say, 423 years? Is this clear to you now? Oh yes, and it's this city where those pagan, where those pagans has decided to establish their imperialistic regime overall. This city over here, The Hague. Is this all clear to you? Let me know in the live chat. So the Democratic Party in the United States comes from the Whig Party, which did not want to give up slavery. They did not want that. When Abraham Lincoln came with the plan to abolish slavery and to reconstruct the American economy, the Whig Party said, okay, we're willing to give up slavery, but we want to decide how we're going to rearrange the economy for the black Americans. Abraham Lincoln said, no, we're either going to reconstruct it fully in an honest way, or we're not going to do it, or we're not do it at all. And the people from the Whig Party, they lost it and they started the American Civil War, and later were called the Democrats. And suddenly they became forefighters for liberation from slaves, so-called. The Republican Party in the United States, co-established by Abraham Lincoln, was meant to focus on local economies established by small families, because that would be the best for the black Americans to start with. I mean, if you just leave the plantation and you have nothing else, you're going to crash. So having a political party that focused on families having their own small economies was the option to integrate black Americans in American society. Even though Abraham Lincoln realized this wouldn't be that easy. I'm not portraying Abraham Lincoln as a full hero over here. I'm just saying the reason why he was assassinated. So now you know the true history of the Democrats and Republicans in the United States. And later, the Democrats began to take over the small Republican Party that emerged. So indirectly, the Democrats began to run the Republican Party. So that's the situation today. The Democrats behind the scenes are running the Republican Party. So if you think you have the Democrats on one side and Republicans on one side, that's not true. The Democrats run the United States, and they got their current form from the Dutch imperialists. Is this clear unto you? So, the title of the live stream is What You Didn't See. Now, based on all I revealed onto you about history that people seldom talk about, now you can put into place why certain things happen a certain way. So, Dutch imperialism should have ended in 1672, but it continued because she had foreign collaborators. And even though the Dutch Empire itself was formally ended in, let me say, in I believe the 1950s somewhere, because she had another, I believe it was 1956, I believe. But anyway, in the 1950s, the Dutch Empire was formally dissolved. the Dutch imperialism continued on a financial and cultural level. Financial through Wall Street and capitalism, and also through a political institution as the Democratic Party. And the Democrats also had their own counterparts in other countries too. So Dutch imperialism, even though it officially is not enacted today in its raw force, it's still being practiced by foreign non-Dutch institutions. For example, the Democratic Party. For example, Wall Street, for those satanic corporations. So you didn't see the bigger picture because a lot of this information was not shared with you in school. Because remember, the school system we have today comes from Prussian militarism, not Russian, Prussian militarism. And Prussian militarism became the German Empire, and later the German Empire was revived as Nazi Germany. So Nazism has its origins in Prussian militarism, and it's Prussian militarism that is the base of the present day school system we have worldwide, which is designed to break you down mentally and turn you into a compliant resident. That's what it's meant to do. The Kingdom of Prussia doesn't exist anymore. It has been because the country Prussia has been abolished in 1947 when it departed Germany in twice. Because Germany as a country only came to existence in 1990. Before that, Germany was divided into West Germany and then East Germany that was run by the Soviets. And before that, you had the German Empire as Nazi Germany. That before that, the Weimar Republic, then the actual German Empire. And before that, you only had the German League. That's why today German states are called Bundesländer, because Bundesland comes from a Bund. A Bund means a bond. It's a league. Yet the German League was established in I believe it was 1815. So now you realize that the Dutch had far more impact on world history than you realize. It's not all negative, but the Dutch pagans who are so obsessed with worshiping their Germanic gods and blame it all on the so-called swamp monsters, which are called people from African ancestry. Well, that part is often left out, but now I just told it to you. And those neckers, or in ancient say niggers, those swamp monsters, are evil spirits or forest deities that Germanic people used to worship in ancient times. And Germanic tribes had this thing to victimize their young women sexually and psychologically for these deities. And often you had ritual drowning, in which they would murder the ritual victims by ritually drowning them. And the Netherlands had many, many lakes. Many were drained in the 19th century, and they built farms in its place, or they put new villages. But the Netherlands had many, many lakes. And of course, those lakes were often used for ritual drowning. But today, many of those lakes don't exist anymore because they drained in the 19th century. So if there were remains over there, they removed them, and now you have farms there and or other towns. So that's it. So remember this: between 1794 and 1800, the majority of the Dutch imperialists were kicked out by the Dutch people themselves. The farmers in the Netherlands back then, also a lot of the civilians, had enough. Because remember, it wasn't just the African population that were demonizing and genociding and exploiting by referring to them as swamp monsters. Okay, someone needs to be blocked now because it's right to spam and things over here. They also were performing Germanic paganism on their own Dutch population. And there were other Germanic cults throughout Europe doing a similar thing, but they were kept in check. Well, since 1800, the Germanic cults in the Netherlands have been have been restrained a lot, also because later the French installed a police force, and we still have a police force in the Netherlands today, even though in 1870 it kind of emerged also. And when the Nazis occupied the Netherlands, were a lot of people also thought, "Wait, this is great. We're part of the German Empire, we're part of our Germanic roots." So there was Nazi sympathy in the Netherlands was occupied. Not all everyone sympathized with it, but there was sympathy for the Nazis occupying the country. So much that the Nazis became terrified, thinking, "Why aren't the Dutch revolting when we occupied their homeland?" There were those who did revolt, but um, well, there were those who did revolt. I'm not saying all got along, but now you know the actual history of the Nazi occupation also. It has to go back to Germanic paganism. What you didn't see was connection between all of this. Now you see this connection. Now you also understand why there's so much censorship going on around a lot of topics. Now you understand that. If you don't see the historical connections, you can't see why things are happening today. So now you understand why the United States is portrayed as this hero nation who rescued the world from Nazi Germany. Now you understand why they keep portraying America like that. Because they need a hero nation in their narrative, because or else they will have to admit that all of the West and a big portion of the world, including the Japanese, were all in on it. Oh, I haven't talked about Japan yet. The Netherlands are, and Japan, the two of the main satanic nations on the earth, when historically speaking. In Japan, they tend to hide it a bit better, and they want to hold on to it. With the Dutch, it were exposed by the Dutch believers over here and by foreigners, and people were opposed Dutch imperialism. So the Netherlands had to give up many of its practices officially. Unofficially, they're still being done here and there, but there's a difference. And that's why the Netherlands and Japan, for over 2 centuries, had a trade relationship. Even though Japan closes borders for all foreigners, Chinese people were allowed to come, some Koreans were allowed to come, and they arrested themselves. And the Dutch had their own artificial island called Deshima, were allowed to come. But why from all the people from the West were only Dutch people allowed to come in? People say, well, the Dutch only want to trade. They didn't come to convert people to Christianity, to Roman Catholicism. That's why Japan was not suspicious of the Dutch. It goes deeper than that. Both the Netherlands at the time and Japan were satanic ghettos. That's one thing they had in common. And that's the main basis why the Netherlands only wanted trade, because they already shared an ideology with the Japanese government of back then, which is called the shogunate, run by a shogun. The shogunate was abolished in 1868 in Japan during the Meiji Restoration, and the Japan became a centralized empire. That's what it is till this day. But the Japanese did not want to let go of this satanic infestation. They didn't. Also because Japan was established in the year 189 by a sodomite witch, together with her younger brother, who did witchcraft on the population. And she used the fear of a Chinese invasion, because the year 189 was also a year that the Chinese Empire was collapsing. So the fear of chaos in Asia and a possible Chinese invasion was there. And this witch, which they call Himiko, I did a podcast about this with a fellow believer in Christ who's a Japanologist. This Himiko, this sodomite witch, she used this crisis to gain political power, and she became a big shaman empress of the area that the Chinese called Wa, was called Yamatai in Japanese. Later, Yamatai was named Yamato. Yamato was later replaced by Nippon, which is the current country Japan. All right. So Now I know that about Japan too. Oh, and in the Tomb Raider video game, you see Himiko also appearing in it. Why? Now you know why. Now you know why. I did a podcast with a fellow believer who is also Japanologist about this, so I'll give a link to that publication soon. So a lot of you don't see what's really going on today because you don't realize that today is an outwork of what happened before. And because you don't see the historical connections, you can't figure out what happens today. You only see the symptoms occurring today. And you think because you see the symptoms, you know what goes on. It's important to look a little bit back in history and figure out what happened before this. And then you figure out, this was going on. So I didn't really have a topic for this live stream or this class. I just want to point out to you, when you miss historical knowledge or any important knowledge, you can't see the bigger picture properly and you end up coming to the wrong conclusions. And then others can exploit you because you don't see things the proper way because you have the wrong conclusions. All right. So, any questions relating to this topic, please? Are there any questions? Let me know. hmm Let me know. If you have any question relating to this topic about any historical region, please ask me. If I have knowledge about it, I'll share it with you now. If not, I'll look into it. hmm God is good all the time. Okay, maybe not a lot of information I share today. I get it. If you have any questions related to this topic of seeing the bigger picture and not being able to see the bigger picture by lacking historical knowledge, you can ask it now. It's quite early for me to ask if there are any questions while I'm staying. Um, okay, you know what? I'm going to turn it around. Any spiritual question, I will walk by faith if you don't understand yet. Please ask me now. Oh, someone asked, why did China and Japan fear? Did something like this happen for them? Okay, let me explain it very briefly. I'm going to summarize a big large of history in a very short, just a few minutes now. So, okay, the Chinese Empire began as the Han Dynasty. Was a warlord who united the Chinese kingdoms into one administration. Why did this happen? Because the Greeks, who ran the world back then, they wanted one economic region to deal with. They didn't want to deal with all the separate Chinese tribes and Chinese kingdoms. They wanted one administration they can deal with for all of Asia. So this sun worshipper, this Apollonian, I think his name was Qin or Xin Huan Di or something like that. But anyway, this Chinese warlord, he unified the Chinese kingdoms and established the Chinese empire, and he used the threat of so-called Huns in the north as an excuse. He and the Chinese empire was established as a centralized economy that should run all of Asia. It was expected all of Asia would pay tribute to the Chinese emperor. And that's what happened in ancient times also. But guess what? Eventually, the Chinese Empire began to collapse, and it had a lot of revolts, especially farming revolts. Also, look up Yellow Turban revolt. Also, look that up. You can find out more about it. In the year 189, by now it was Rome that ran the world. So, the Roman Empire, continuation of the Greek Empire, and all that. So, by now, as I mentioned before, you had 50 communities throughout Japan, divided in around, let's say, 31 kingdoms, and 29 of them joined together under this Sodomite witch as this new economic unit called Yamatai or Yamato. Later in history, the Koreans became dominant in Yamato, and around the year 600, yes, they renovated this unit Yamato into an empire, official man-dominated empire called Nippon, which means the origin of the sun. Which sun referring to is not that sun that we see every day, referring to Apollo, because they're pagans. From that point on, the Japanese, on the lead of Korean nobles, because were Korean nobles that moved into from the Korean Peninsula, and they later, with all their wealth and money, reformed Yamato into the Japanese Empire. They wanted the capital of the Japanese Empire, which then was Kyoto, to be the new Asian center instead of the capital of China. And that was the beginning of the rivalry because the Chinese thought, no, we are the central focus of Asia. But in Japan, they said, no, 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 we are. And Korea was in between, was a battleground between the two. Now, Korea became a separate nation in the late, I'm say, 14th century, yet late 14th century, called the Chosun dynasty. But still, China kept a grip over the foreign policy of Korea. Till 1876, yes, 1876, when Japan said, enough. Korea, you deal as an independent nation. And the rest, it's really look up for yourself. So this is answer your question, Demetria, why there's this rivalry between China and Japan as two nations. Do you also understand what this rivalry is based upon? And by the way, if you know about Japanese society, now you know why xenophobia is a big thing in Japan. This fear of China. It's something historically that's been embedded in the public. Yep. All right. Any other questions? Do you think they started the problems against women sort of too? Well, the problems against women started in the Garden of Eden with Satan enacting his hatred towards the female. So, but when it comes to the history since the Greek Empire, this institutionalized misogyny came from the ancient Greeks, and it's been institutionalized worldwide since then. So that's what it comes from. And in Asia, it was solidified in the Han Dynasty. And even though Japan in, was established by a sodomite, which eventually the new Japan, I say reformed around the year 600, decided to not want to honor this witch origin of Japan. So they, which was quite embarrassing to them, so they now wanted a male dominated society with a little role for females. The one child rule of China, I believe it's been abolished like 2 or 3 years ago. The purpose was to um, to to shut down the growth of the minorities in China, because you have dark-skinned minorities in China. Chinese people used to be a dark-skinned population, But since the Mongolian invasion and the genocides that happened under Genghis Khan and the mass rapes that happened, a lot of the Chinese populace became more light and lighter skinned, became more pale skinned. So Chinese people and also Koreans were not pale skinned people. They used to be brown and dark skinned people. You can still find dark skinned native Koreans, dark skinned native Chinese people this day, but they're hidden. And Mao Zedong, devil worshiper as he was, wanted to glorify the pale skinned Chinese. So his the idea was pale skinned Chinese people don't need many children because they're superior. Guess what? It backfired because though this institutionalized misogyny, they didn't prefer baby girls. So often baby girls were either aborted or thrown in trash cans, and that's how Western Asia can adopt a lot of those babies from China. That's why, for example, in the Netherlands, you have a lot of Chinese women who are adopted by white Dutch parents, because China used to just throw baby girls in the trash can or just kill them. The one-child policy backfired, and now you have a shortage of the pale Chinese women. So that's a problem they have now. Well, nobody taught them to worship. Nobody told them to worship Satan. So, but anyway, so no pity on China for that. All right. Any other questions? I'm seeing an explosion of Asian men with dark skin women. What's up with that? There's a shortage of pale Chinese women. So a lot of the pale Chinese men are now going for the women that are more accessible to them. Though to the history and culture of China in Asia, the Chinese men, they kind of are resisted when they want a Korean wife or Japanese wife or Vietnamese wife. Vietnam a bit less, but there's a type of resistance to it because the Koreans, the Japanese, they all want to keep their own ethnicity pure from Chinese influence. So they go to the place that will accept them, and that's Africa, the continent of Africa. That's why. So now you're going to have um, a Sino black population, a mixed population of black Chinese people emerging again. So right now, though tremendous Chinese men finding black women as wives, the the I'm saying the whitening of China over Southeast Asia by Genghis Khan is being undone, and Africans will get a better grip over China because of that. Because China will have a population decline happening very soon, and though the Chinese babies being born are black babies with Chinese ancestry. All right. So I hope that's clear to you. Well, I prefer that the questions about this topic because that will keep the live stream in harmony. As long as the question is not too off topic, I'm okay with it. Mhm. Any other questions? Let me know. God is good. So you're around. It's not that quiet around here. It's a bit occupied this Sunday. Okay. I'll just wait for another minute to see if I get any questions. If you have no questions anymore, then I'll just close out the live stream. I'll do some telephone fellowship then with some believers. I'll just wait for another minute. Are there any questions? Let me know. God is good. I'll rather explain this question one time, let. I explain it over and over again. The Heavenly Father glorifies Himself by us walking in power and overcoming the darkness of the world. Now, sometimes I get questions that I've answered over and over again. I'm thinking, you still don't get it? It's not an attack. I'm thinking, come on, they should get this by now. But now you understand well this. Oh, and by the way, by letting those worldlings on the loose, we see the truth of what they are. If the Heavenly Father would cover up every attack on us, we would get the false sense we will get the false reality that isn't real. God is good. Any more questions? I'll wait for a half a minute more. Mm, all right. Well, I don't get any more questions. Well, thank you all for being here. Keep agreeing with Christ. Be at peace. And please, Jesus is Lord. He's supreme. Not black, nor white, nor Asian. And Christ is supreme. He is God. I'll see you next time. Be at peace.